Is Fermin Lopez off to Chelsea? If so, why oh why? Kool-Aids are divided on this because I can't tell who actually wants this. And I think there are some Kool-Aids who are arguing for it. Maybe the board is arguing for it. There's a lot of moving parts here. So this was definitely something that I wanted to cover this week, whether or not he stays. Welcome to episode 716 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and if you're new here, subscribing to the YouTube channel is probably the best way for me to continue to make videos like this. But if you're listening for the first time, I appreciate you as well and say welcome. Becoming a patron for as low as $3, that can help me to continue to make more shows like this one. All right, now back to Fermin Lopez. Here's what we know so far. Barcelona is not back to the 1-to-1. I know that's a whole different video, so they can't register the whole squad. Chelsea want another attacking midfielder, so we are told, and the reported numbers are that Chelsea has dangled a 50 million euro bid, but more importantly for Fermin Lopez, an almost triple the salary bump. Those reports are coming from inside the house, from Catalonia media, so I don't know, take those with a grain of salt. Fermin is reportedly looking at the offer, but does want to stay at Barcelona. That does seem to be true. Hansi Flick also wants him to stay. That is pretty much the only part of the story at this point that we can guarantee is 100% accurate. Hansi Flick has said, keep Fermin Lopez with me. So going through the pros and cons, let's talk about Fermin Lopez himself first. I know people are saying that 50 million is too low, but I do want to take a second to reflect on how impressive even that number is. Again, before we even talk about this, if this is the end for Fermin Lopez at Barcelona, I want to remind you that just 3 seasons ago, Fermin Lopez was on loan at Linares in the lower divisions in Spain, and I didn't think we'd be seeing him coming back to Barcelona. He was always a bit smaller, very, very talented, especially on the ball, but he was always a bit smaller than everyone in La Masia, and I was always concerned that he didn't necessarily have a best position. Because of his size in the academy, he would often play on the wings. Yes, he would also play as attacking midfielder. Sometimes they would throw him as a false 9. He was, yes, very versatile because of his talent, but he also didn't necessarily always start, even with the U16s. Fast forward 2 years from then 3 seasons ago at Linares, he was the best player at the 2024 Olympics for Spain and won a gold medal. He has scored 11 goals in 42 appearances, that being 2 years ago, and had 8 goals and 10 assists in 46 appearances last season. At 22, he has established himself at one of the biggest clubs in the world, and there are people who back him to potentially start for one of the biggest clubs in the world. And I'd say that is pretty good for a player that only us La Masia sickos had heard of just 3 years ago. So why would he go to Chelsea? Reason number one is, of course, whatever the drama is, I don't think I'm young enough to know, but whatever the drama is between Fermin and Gabi, maybe that locker room is only big enough for one of them. I say this in jest because they are professionals and they both want to see to Barcelona, but the fact that that's even being brought up in the conversation is kind of scary. I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So yeah, we're saying that in jest, but we're putting that one behind us. Now, it's a sporting reason. The Catalonia media has pushed that, and we've heard that Chelsea are offering him a protagonist role under Enzo Maresca. But if you take just 2 seconds to think about, I ask how. Cole Palmer is the starting attacking midfielder for Chelsea, and he is a whole lot healthier than Dani Olmo is. João Pedro can also play in that spot. Plus, Chelsea are still pushing for Xavi Simons, and they just added Garnacho. Though if Xavi does come, that means that Fermin is likely sticking around Barcelona. There's also a reminder that Xavi Simons was one of Fermin's teammates in the academy, and again, it would be the second time that Fermin would get to play because Simons is moving clubs. So as far as this being a footballing move benefiting Fermin, yeah, I just don't see that. The big reason we know that he would move is, of course, that sweet green, that money. If he really would be going from around 4 million a year to more than 12 million a year, who wouldn't do that? Would you do that? Yeah, unless you really love Barcelona, already have that 12 million in your pocket. I think most players are going to do that. Because what do I always say? You don't know how long your career is going to be. Life is unpredictable. So go get that bag when you can. For the younger fans especially, just go get that bag. Now, why would he stick around at Barcelona? I think the answers here are a lot more clear. This is his home. That's where he wants to succeed. That's where he wants to be a legend. He already knows where he sits in the team. And another injury to Dani Olmo, which is very likely, and it's his spot at that number 10 role, and everybody else is unnatural. Whether or not there are more talented players, everybody else isn't as comfortable in that number 10 spot in the first team as him. I know Rafinha started there against Levante, and Fermin didn't see the field, but Rafinha at the 10 experiment may just remain there. Flick has been outspoken that Fermin hasn't started the season well, and the German manager is looking for a response, which I think Fermin is capable of delivering, and I don't think Hansi Flick would be so critical of a player that he assumes likely won't be here next week. Now let's pivot to why Barcelona would or wouldn't want this move, and unfortunately for all of you, I do have to bore you because it all comes down to FFP, let alone that transfer fee. People are saying that his price should be 70 million and a 50 million valuation for him is low, but that's kind of the problem with Barca's dirty registration laundry being out there. 20 mil might be the leverage that they've lost because all the other clubs know what's up with Spanish teams. That said, it might be a down season for Fermin this year, and you never know if 50 mil this summer is the max that you get from him. Part of my gut does say that 50 mil is striking while the iron is hot because he is 22 at the moment, and this might be who he is, but he also might still be improving as well. Of course, the obvious answer with this transfer would be the benefit that Barcelona then can register Tech, Rooney Bargi, and Gerard Martin, and possibly Olmo if the final court case goes against them. But I wouldn't worry about that because every other ruling has gone Barca's way so far. But selling Fermin isn't just about registering 3 bench players. I think Hansi Flick would probably choose Fermin over those 3 unless he really thinks that Gerard Martin is necessary for depth of that back line. A Fermin sale, and in particular Fermin, and the reason why we also have to add Costado and his rumors to this, a sale for one of them would benefit the club in January and beyond, with another reminder that a sale of an academy product doesn't have to account for amortization on the contract. So the revenue made from his sale is direct relief to the wage bill, which again is why it's more advantageous to sell your academy kids than somebody like Ferran Torres and or Romeu, even if that academy player is on much lower wages. For Barcelona, it would also open up more opportunities for Dro Fernandez and Tony Fernandez, who might both be too good for the 4th division. The best counter argument I have heard so far, and I do want to give credence to it, is that, well, if they are better than Fermin, then why aren't they already playing over him in the first team? And to that I say, fair play, that does make a bit of logical sense, but Fermin had already earned that spot in the first team, and it's his spot to have over 2 17-year-olds who can play elsewhere every weekend with Barca Athletic. Fermin has to play with the first team, and you want to keep some semblance of squad continuity by playing the first team player and trying, at least on the surface, to keep everybody happy that isn't trying to leave the club actively. But if he were to leave, they, or at least one of them, reportedly Dro, would get the chance. And while Fermin is a better goal scorer right now than both of them, I do think Tony has a much higher potential in terms of total goal output, goals and assists, and I think Dro is a much better fit in what Hansi Flick wants out of his creative number 10, especially in tight spaces. So I can easily see, we saw it in the preseason, a path forward for at least one of them into the first team to give you this season about 60% of the production that Fermin Lopez did, with the exception of the fact that he did play 46 games last year, and he did eat up a bunch of minutes when Dani Olmo was out injured, and I don't think you can expect the 17-year-olds to do that same thing. And the cons for Barcelona are all things that are related to on-the-field stuff. Hansi Flick would not be very happy if the club were to ship out Fermin Lopez. When your manager is saying that he doesn't want to lose a talent that helped with 3 trophies last season and he'll be essential for squad rotation this season, maybe Barcelona needs to believe their manager. Sounds like you should probably keep him around. I also don't think moving on Fermin could bring in that extra center back that would displace one of the 3 current players. So I think it's probably best to let Flick figure things out with the squad that he has. Then next summer, you go all out for that left-footed center back. And yes, while probably impossible, Bastoni from Inter Milan would probably be the best revenge. Now for Chelsea, they would be adding another player to their war chest, and one who would likely keep his resale value much better in the EPL, where their deep pockets keep them positions of financial strength in negotiations, even if Chelsea is spending more on their squad than they're bringing in. And Fermin Lopez, I think, is a player that would suit the Premier League as well. The fact that he is such a vertical player, I think it, playing style-wise, would work out. It's weird that the reports sound like Chelsea is driving this deal, though. That's where I find some more skepticism. They currently need to offload players to comply with UEFA rules, or they risk registration issues for the Champions League. Those players might already know who they are leaving, but it's still puzzling to add another player to that mess. But since Chelsea aren't paying his €500 million release clause, and boy did the Liga team start to get smart with those, it's ultimately up to Fermin Lopez whether or not he wants to move away from Barcelona to Chelsea, or stick around, or even go to Bayern Munich, which I think is very unlikely as well. Which is where this all currently sits at the time of recording. Fermin's final decision is expected to come down in the next 48 hours. So will the new salary do all the talking? Is it actually Barcelona pushing the rumors and buzz because they are financially desperate? Would Fermin actually play at Chelsea? Those are all questions I would love for you to answer to. So drop your thoughts into the comments on YouTube or hit me up on social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, become a Patreon, listen on the podcast apps. All of that is a great bit of help. And as always, until next time, Forza Barca.